Yum, yum!
Greg here from Pixel Fondue, and this is a nifty little effect I created with a particle generator and a particle modifier with a Falloff attached, as well as a cool little deformer called Soft Lag, which you've probably never heard of unless you've dug around in MODO quite a bit, as well as some gradient, some mesh operations and a little bit of gradient shading. Anyway, it's probably a cool effect you can use for some motion graphics or something like that. So let's see how that's done. It's actually pretty easy to set up. Going over here to MODO, here's the scene with it already set up. And it's going around in a spiral motion, so there is this fall off is attached to a spiral with a path constraint, which I'll show how to do that as well in case you don't typically do that. And yeah, so I'm just going to go to a brand new scene and start adding the things I need. So you can open up your schematic down at the bottom, and you can add items to the scene either with the add item up here, or I'm just going to use the one down here in the schematic. And I do need a particle generator, so particle generator right here. That's going to give me my sort of a procedural field of particles that I can use to help create this effect. And you can see it sort of adds a locator to the scene right here. You don't need it visible. You can turn it off if it's annoying. I'm also going to add a replicator. Whoops. Add replicator, because we will be using that quite a bit. I'm going to add a particle modifier, which will be used to move the particles up and scale them and rotate them a little bit. And then I'm also going to add a radial fall off, adding lots of things. I know, I promise I'll hook them all up. And then I'm going to select my mesh here. I'm going to call this, we'll just call it shape, because I'm going to create a procedural cube in there and plug that into the replicator. So I'm going to add selected and add my shape down here. And then what else do I need? I need a couple more mesh items here. So I'm going to press in for new mesh, and we'll call this guy spiral. That's the spiral that we're going to attach the fall off to. And in for another new mesh. I think this is the last one. We'll call this one merged particles, and we'll show you how that's done in a second. Okay, great. Let's start adding stuff together here. Okay, I'm going to hide my radio fall off right now. So, particle generator. That is something that MODO uses to create an array of particles. Now, you cannot see them in the viewport here because Foundry likes to trick people and make you think that they don't actually exist. And in fact, they haven't actually programmed them to show in the viewport for some reason I cannot discern. It's only been like 7,000 years since these have been in MODO. Please, somebody program a way to see these in OpenGL without having to hook it up to a replicator. Okay, there's a rant. Done ranting. I'm just going to skip this for now and go right to the particle source and a shape right into prototype. In my shape, I'm going to add a procedural cube. I like to use procedurals for this type of stuff because you can change it later to a sphere or some other shape or do some mesh operations on it for fun. And so we'll just do cube. You can also change the size procedurally and all that as well. So you can see the cube I'm going to make quite a bit smaller, like maybe 0.05, control return to get it all three axes there. And there's my array, right? So this particle generator is creating this cubic array right here with a count of 4 cubes in every direction. This cube right here in the middle, that's our prototype, and we don't actually need that visible, so let's just look at our array. Very beautiful, but I don't want it in 3 dimensions. I just want a plane. So my particle generator can do, it can do an array, it can do like a radial one, it can do, just up this. So it's pretty cool. It can do a lot of stuff, but I'm just gonna do an array here, and let's do maybe 1 count in y, so we get it down into just one plane, and then move the length of y back to 0, so it's centered on 0 there. And then I guess I can just grab these x and z counts here, and then press C for channel haul, and then just drag until I sort of like the density, something like this. I'm actually going to make the array bigger, maybe 2 meters in each direction, and double these up to like 34 or so. So a nice dense array of cubes, and press C again to drop channel haul, and that'll work well for us right there. Okay, so now how do we get them to pop up? Like in this, it's popping up, and the way that we're doing that is using, or the way that I specifically am doing that, is using this particle modifier here. And a particle modifier is exactly what it says. It just grabs some particles from the particle generator, and then you can do some positioning and rotating and scaling them. And so if I plug this into the particle source, and then instead of having the particle generator going to the particle source or the replicator. I'm just going to use the particle modifier. And then you'll notice when I do something like, I'm just going to channel hold the scale. You can see I can change the scale, or I can rotate them around. Let me push in here. I can rotate them around. Sweet. Or I can also move them. So if I want to move them up and Y, I can move them up. So I'm going to move them up to like 0.33. And I'm going to scale them like 70%. And then I'm going to also rotate it like 90 or so in Y. And then I'll add my fall off. You see there's a fall off slot in here. So my radio fall off, let me turn it back on so we can see it. If I add this to the fall off slot, then boom, we start to get that effect. We're in the center of the fall off. It gets the full effect of the particle modifier. And then as it goes to 0 on the outer edge of the fall off, this particle modifier is no longer affecting these particles, right? So pretty useful. In fact, I'm going to actually make this guy a little bit smaller. The radius here, just sort of squish it down. I use channel haul a lot. Grab channels here, press C, click and drag. It's a really nice way to get through some values, just sort of interactively adjust values in MODO. You can do things like adjust the solid core. Channel haul is still active, so I pick new channels. I could just do that. You can, do that, or the decay shape will change the fall off there. So whatever you want to do it until you're happy. Okay, I'm happy with this, so I'm going to stop. Now, if I move this, press W and move my item around, you'll see. Let me just grab like the planar. You see it moving around here. So obviously, I animate this, and boom, boom, boom. I get this kind of cool effect. But I want to get that cool lag effect in there with a ripply, wavy thing. And in fact, I'm going to do that second. Right now, I'm going to attach this to a spiral path first. So here in my spiral mesh item, that is just going to be a container for a new mesh operation. And then you can just type in spiral, and whoops. You can type in spiral if you have the cursor in the right place. Type in spiral if you spell it right. And there's a spiral curve mesh operation. Again, like, you probably not, unless you really mess around in MODO, you don't know these things exist, but there it is. And it's got some parameters here. Let's go to Y. There it is, going up in the air. Got lots of curves. So twist per meter, 360. Okay, great. Why don't we do a length of 1 meter and maybe 720. So there's a couple of twists. And then we can taper it. So it sort of goes like this in the middle, maybe like 100%. So this point right here is at 0. And you'll notice I'm just going to isolate by pressing this button right here. And I can hide my... Again, so the fall off is a locator. So if I hide locators, that'll disappear. What I want to do is squish it down in Y. So it's just a flat spiral, not this sort of extruded spiral here. And I can't do it on my mesh operator here. So what I'll do is I'll add another mesh operator. I'll just add a transform effector. There it is. What that does is it adds a locator to the scene. So if I turn my locators back on, you'll see this transform effector will let me move this guy around or scale it or rotate it or whatever. I'm just going to go scale to 0. So again, let me just isolate this, turn off locators, and you can see now I've got a nice spiral like this. So looks good. And if I want to attach this locator to it, turn my locators back out, attach my radial fall off to it, I can do that with a path constraint. First, I need to make this guy a little bit bigger. So spiral curve, what do I need the radius to be? Maybe 2 or so, like that. That's looking good. In fact, what's my array look like? My turn off this isolate here, so that's a little bit too big. Maybe a radius of 1. That's what I want, I believe. Look up. Yes, so it spirals around and leaves. Maybe just a little bit bigger than 1, like that. Okay, looking good. And so what I want to do is select my radial fall off like this, and I want to go over here to this little jointy thing to go over to my rigging controls, and under constraints you'll see there's actually, do I want constraints? I do want constraints. I want this path constraint here, so I select my radial fall off, and then I control click the spiral, and now the path constraint is available. Press that. Now it's constrained to the spiral. kind of hide my replicator real quick so you can see how this works. And if I click the little plusy minusy thing here, I can see my path constraint, and I've got some controls. So I just, again, do channel haul. You can see I can animate that. So why don't we go set a key at 0 here. Frame 0, we'll do 0. I'm actually going to make this like maybe 350 frames. And at frame, we'll just go like 180. We'll call this 100%, and that'll give us some time to have it do the rippling effect. So there it is, like that. Looking good. So if I turn my replicator back on and drag, you'll see it's doing that. But I need to do the lag effect. And in fact, well, before I do the lag effect, let me just do a little bit of keyframing. So at the beginning, we don't want this effect to be all like that. So let's move our radius down to 0 and key it. And by pressing S, it keys the selected channels. Then just push forward just a little bit and go back up to radius 0.5 everywhere. Whoops, 0.5. 0.5. Why is it not keying set? 0.5, there. So it grows. Why am I not doing 0 control return for all the channels? There we go. So it's growing and going down the spiral, and then we'll probably just press S again with these selected channels to set a key, and near the end I'll just channel haul that back down to 0. Looking good. So yeah, so our effect sort of fades in and out. So it comes up, spirals around, and goes out. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so now we need a soft lag. And soft lag is a deformer, and it only works on vertices. And the vertices generated by a particle generator are not mesh vertices. They're sort of procedural vertices that the soft lag deformer is not going to work on. So we need to translate or transform these particle generator vertices into actual geometric vertices like you'd find with any mesh, and do that while keeping this procedural, so we can always go back and change this if we want to. And now we can do that in MODO 13 because we can mesh merge particle generators into meshes, and it just turns all those particles into points. So I've got my mesh merged particles empty mesh item here that I created earlier, and add operator, and you can probably guess what I'm doing. Mesh merge, merge mesh, mesh merge. Merge mesh, I think, actually. Merge meshes. That's what we want. And we want to merge what? We want to merge our particle modifier. So after they've been modified. So that's going to be merged. So you can see this happening here. But if I look at my merged particles and just isolate it like this and make sure I can see verts, you can see them right there. So I've got this sort of procedural vertices in the scene now. Now what I do have to do is add this to my schematic down here and plug it into the particle source. So I no longer want my particle modifier into the particle source. I want my merged particles into the particle source. But that's fine because my merged particles are merged with the particle modifier via merge meshes. So it's all working the same. But now my merge meshes is available for some deformation. So any deformer that MODO has can be applied to this now. So I will add the soft lag deformer. Let me turn all these guys back on so you can see it. So we'll turn off the verts there. I think I could turn off locators now. So yeah, I'm going to hide my spiral. And what I want to do is add operator and add soft lag. All right, soft lag right there. And it really just has one parameter here. So if I show soft lag happening, there it is. And you see this sort of trailing effect. Let me just play, actually. Should play in pretty much real time. So I'm going to start over. There it goes. So there's this little bit of a ripple effect happening after it. To increase the effect, you're actually going to... I think I have a weird keyframe in there on my PMod, maybe. Do I have a keyframe on this guy? No? Okay. That's weird. Keyframe on something. Just set the scene to start at 1. Please ignore any errors I may have made while making this tutorial. Okay, so anyway, soft lag. So you'll see it attached here, soft lag. And so I actually lower the strength. It's going to have a bit of a greater effect, which is sort of weird. But if you watch this now, there's a little more of a ripple trailing it now, right? So you can lower that down to, really whatever you want, maybe 15%. And so it's whipping around, and there's the sort of trailing, ripply, watery effect following it. Pretty sweet. That's kind of all there is to it. Yeah, I think we're done. Oh, if you want to do some gradient, let me just go to advanced mode here. In advanced mode, you can see gradients in the shader trees. So there's a couple ways to shade this. We can shade our shape here. You see it's hidden. I can create an item mask for this, so I can do shade, create item mask. I can also go in and add another mesh operation for the material tag. Again, like if you ever want to mess around with this, because it is procedural, I can go in and just add like, a sphere and then turn off my cube, and now I have spheres. They're all kind of big, but let's make these smaller spheres. So now I have, the same effect, but with spheres. And that's just, again, why I kept it procedural, right? So I actually like these spheres a little better, weirdly. So let's keep the spheres and instead of the cube. And then I can always just, turn these off and on if I want, or even animate them. It's pretty sweet, really, the way MODO's set up there. I'll add one more mesh operator. We'll just do it set material tag. Where is that? Set material tag? Maybe it's material tag. It's just material tag. Okay. And we'll call this prototype, or whatever you want to call it. One thing that's interesting is, because the shape layer is turned off, it has these all these different tags or different mesh operations on there. If I go to a shader tree and add a group and then look for that prototype group, you'll see it's not there. That polygon tag is not showing up, the material tag we just made. It's just because MODO has some lazy evaluation where it speeds things up by not trying to evaluate everything all the time. If I turn this on, it's going to evaluate that material tag mesh operation now, and you'll see it. Theoretically, you'll see it in there. Yes, prototype, there it is. But then I can turn this guy off, so I don't see it there in the middle. It's not that off. Turn off the shape so I don't see it there. And now with this active, I can add a material in there. And you'll see if I change the color here, it's going to change the color. Looks great. But I'm actually going to change the color with a gradient. So processing, gradient. And for the input of the gradient, I don't want incidence angle. Well, let me just go adjust the gradient here real quick. So middle click for a key, pink, blue, because those are my colors. I ran track of Kansas, pink and blue. So you can see it there, instance angle, which is pretty sweet. But we don't really want incidence angle. We want something else. We want sample parameters, y distance to locator. That locator is actually the texture locator of the gradient, which is at 0, 0, 0. So it's the distance in y to that locator. So here, if you look at this, push back a little bit here. So I push forward here at 1 meter away from the locator, 1 meter in y in this case, you'll see that it's turning pink. So I want it to drag this down just a little bit so I get some nice, pink there at the top, maybe a little more. I might turn off wireframe. Yeah, something like that. Looks pretty good. Drag through here. Boom. Lovely. You hide this and hide this. And let's get a good camera angle. Oh, that's so dramatic. And then I'm going to hit play. And there it is. Sweet. That's all. Have fun with SoftFlag.
Yum, yum.